Andy Williams recorded 43 studio albums, 17 of which, along with the 1970 compilation Andy Williams' Greatest Hits, received gold certification from the Recording Industry Association of America for selling 500,000 units. 3 of those recipients went on to reach 1 million in sales, for which they were awarded platinum certification. Between studio, Christmas, and compilation albums, he had 35 entries on the Pop Albums chart in Billboard magazine, with 12 of those making the top 10. One of those 12, his 1963 album Days of Wine and Roses and Other TV Requests, spent 16 weeks at number 1 and comes in at number 5 on the list of the top albums released in the 1960s in terms of Billboard chart performance. During the 1960s and early 1970s, 2 of his Platinum LPs, the Andy Williams Christmas album and Merry Christmas, made annual appearances on the magazine's Christmas Albums chart, where they each reached the number 1 position in multiple holiday seasons. In a ranking of the top album artists of the 1960s in terms of Billboard chart performance, he comes in at number 8. Williams also recorded 45 songs that reached Billboard magazine's Hot 100 chart in the United States and another 8 that bubbled under the Hot 100. 8 of these 53 recordings made the top 10, including 1957's Butterfly, which spent 3 weeks at number 1, and 32 of them are also on the list of 44 entries that Williams had on the magazine's Easy Listening chart, which was started in 1961. 19 of those 44 songs made the top 10 on that list, and 4 of them, Can't Get Used to Losing You, In the Arms of Love, Happy Heart, and Where Do I Begin, Love Story, went on to number 1. In a ranking of Billboard's top adult contemporary chart performers from 1961 to 1969, he comes in at number 5. In 1963, the Williams recording of White Christmas was released to promote the Andy Williams Christmas album and spent the last 5 weeks of the year at number 1 on Billboard's Christmas Singles chart. The album also included It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year, which was written for the Andy Williams Show and became a staple of his annual Christmas specials. Although covers of the song he originated by artists such as Garth Brooks and Harry Connick Jr., had single chart runs in Billboard upon initial release. The recording by Williams enjoyed widespread popularity several decades after it debuted. The list of the top 10 holiday songs since 2001 that was published by Billboard in 2009 ranked the Williams recording at number 5. And on the 2010 countdown of holiday songs receiving the most radio airplay as determined by the American Society of Composers, Authors and Publishers, also known as ASCAP, the Williams classic came in at number 4. Since the British phonographic industry began its awards in 1973, Williams had 12 albums receive silver certification for selling 60,000 units in the UK. And 6 of those albums eventually sold the 100,000 units necessary for receiving gold certification. On the UK album chart he had 30 entries, with 11 of those making the top 10. He also had 23 recordings that reached the UK singles chart, with 9 of those reaching the top 10, including Butterfly, which spent 2 weeks at number 1. Label X and the Cadence Years. Williams's first recordings as a solo artist were done in 2 sessions for the RCA Victor subsidiary Label X in the mid-1950s. 2 songs were recorded at the first session, Groundhog and There Is a Time. But according to Williams, nothing came of this date. The numbers are still on the shelf. The 4 songs from the other session produced 2 singles, Why Should I Cry Over You, You Can't Buy Happiness, and Now I Know, Here Comes That Dream Again. In 1967, Williams described something he learned in moving from RCA to Cadence Records in 1955. I realized that what I had done for Label X wasn't the right kind of product. In fact, the proof of this is that even years later, when I was selling big on Columbia, those sides were never reissued on RCA. Quote, when Williams arrived at Cadence on December 1, 1955, label founder Archie Bleyer immediately had him record 2 holiday songs, The Wind, The Sand and the Star, and Christmas is a Feeling in Your Heart. But Williams explains in his autobiography that his new boss didn't get the record released until a few days before Christmas, and that it sold only 10,000 copies. His next single, however, included his first song to reach the Billboard Hot 100, Walk Hand in Hand, and it became the first of half a dozen hits to be packaged together with their corresponding B-sides on his first compilation album, which was simply entitled Andy Williams. For his first studio album, Williams decided to pay tribute to the songwriting talent of his Tonight Show colleague Steve Allen because, he explains, I thought that if I recorded an album of Steve's own compositions, he might let me sing one or two on the show. Allen, in fact, had Williams eventually perform the entire album on the show by having him sing a different song each night. Williams turned to the popular duo of Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein too for his second Cadence LP, which included songs from their Broadway musicals Carousel, The King and I, Oklahoma, and South Pacific. Indeed, each of the long players he made for the label had its own specific focus, such as songs from Hawaii or France. And it was during this phase that he recorded Lonely Street, his first release to reach the pop albums chart in Billboard magazine. The singles that Williams recorded for Cadence charted much more frequently. Of his 16 A-sides that made the Billboard Hot 100 and its predecessors during this period, 11 of them made it into the top 40 positions on the chart, and 6 of those reached the top 10. Some of these hits fit in nicely with the ballads, or what is now called the traditional pop format, of many of his LPs at the time. In fact, 3 of the more successful songs from this era, the Hawaiian Wedding Song, Lonely Street, and The Village of St. Bernadette, inspired the themes of the albums on which they later appeared. But several singles, including Butterfly, I Like Your Kind of Love, and Lips of Wine, followed the burgeoning rock and roll trend. Archie wasn't trying to turn me into a poor man's Elvis. He was just trying to find hit songs. If they were rock and roll, then he wanted them sung that way. Quote, the Columbia years. Williams's move to Columbia Records in 1961 heralded the start of a highly successful series of albums produced by Robert Mersey that focused on standards, including many from stage and screen, with some easy listening hits of the day eventually becoming part of the formula. One of these projects, 1962's Moon River and Other Great Movie Themes, became his first album to reach the top 10 on Billboard's Top LPs chart and his earliest recording to receive gold certification from the Recording Industry Association of America. His chart-topping Days of Wine and Roses and Other TV Requests, which included his number 2 pop hit, Can't Get Used to Losing You, also reached the 500,000 mark in sales, as did the next 5 consecutive top 10 albums and 2 number 1 Christmas LPs on which Mersey also did much of the arranging and conducting. His top 10 release from 1966, The Shadow of Your Smile, featured covers of the Beatles songs Michelle and Yesterday, and foreshadowed the shift that Williams would be making over the next few years toward contemporary material. His next LP, In the Arms of Love, peaked only as high as number 21, making it his lowest charting studio album with Columbia to date and helping to explain why it didn't sell enough to receive gold certification. After 12 projects with Mersey at the helm, Williams moved on to work with producers that could accommodate his more modern aspirations. He began his next string of gold records in 1967 with Born Free, which relied exclusively on recent hits from the pop and easy listening charts and became the first of 5 more top 10 albums he would release. When Clive Davis became president of Columbia Records that same year, he paid close attention to the label's easy listening artists since most of them were experiencing a decline in sales. Only Williams was really keeping current. He was open to the new, younger writers that were emerging. One of the musical directors of The Andy Williams Show, Jack Elliott, had made note of the singer's musical taste in 1967 as well. Andy constantly wants to do new material. If anything, the only professional criticism I would have is that I think he reaches too hard for today's stuff. But in retrospect, Davis takes on part of the responsibility for trying to appeal to young record buyers. I urged Andy to include only the most well-known of contemporary songs in his albums. I had carefully studied the sales of his albums, and it was a matter of mathematics. Sales increased in proportion to the number of identifiable titles on the album cover. It became almost a formula. Quote, "The formula also worked well in England, where his next LP, Love, Andy, reached number 1. And even as Williams was not charting and selling in the US in the 1970s as he had been, the numbers from across the Atlantic remained impressive. The 1970 Andy Williams Greatest Hits compilation reached number 42 during its 20 weeks on Billboard's list of the 200 top LPs in America. But in the UK, the album spent its first 3 weeks on a much smaller album chart at number 2 before eventually spending 5 of its 116 weeks there at number 1. His final top 10 LP in America, 1971's Love Story, went under the title Home Lovin' Man in the UK, where it reached number 1. And 4 more top 10 albums followed it onto the UK chart, including 1974's The Way We Were, which was the first of his 25 studio albums released by Columbia thus far that did not reach the Billboard charts. His popularity in England wasn't enough to sustain his relationship with Columbia much longer, and he recorded a few more albums that didn't receive wide attention before moving on. The post-Columbia years. In 1984, British record producers Tony Hiller and Nicky Graham enticed Williams back into the studio after a 4-year hiatus to record Greatest Love Classics, a project in which the duo had written lyrics for selections of classical music. His next 3 albums revisited concepts with which it had varying degrees of success. Movie songs on Close Enough for Love, Christmas music on I Still Believe in Santa Claus, and country music on Nashville. In 1994, he released audio and video recordings of 2 concerts that were filmed at his Moon River Theater in Branson, Missouri. The CD Greatest Hits and corresponding video Andy Williams in concert at Branson featured live performances of Moon River, Can't Get Used to Losing You, Canadian Sunset, and many others. And the new Andy Williams Christmas album and its video companion, The Andy Williams Christmas Show, offered many favorites from his holiday albums, including White Christmas, on which he is joined by Laurie Morgan and the Osmond Brothers. The following year he released an album of new holiday recordings entitled We Need a Little Christmas, but his next return to the studio wasn't until 2006, when he recorded I Don't Remember Ever Growing Up, which was released in the UK the following year. Albums, studio albums, album reissues. Many of the albums that Williams recorded were originally available in the vinyl LP, 8-track tape, reel-to-reel, and audio cassette formats but were later reissued on compact disc. with close to 80 minutes of space available on each disc. It was possible to combine 2 albums on one CD, and most Williams albums have been paired up and reissued in this format, as shown in the collapsed table below. A title of UK version. Compilation albums. Several Williams compilations are noteworthy for either their chart success, as noted by 19 of them listed below, or the material included. For example, Williams himself selected the songs included on Moon River. The very best of Andy Williams. Live albums. 2 Williams concerts in 1993 became his first domestic releases of live material. Additional compilations. 16 most requested songs. 1986. Columbia, Legacy. Moon River. 1990, 1995, 2002. CBS, Sony, Collectibles. Unchained Melody. 1990-2011. Curb. The Best of Andy Williams. 1991. Curb. Personal Christmas Collection. 1994. Legacy. Sony Music Distribution. The Best of Andy Williams. 1996. Sony Music. Columbia. BPI. Silver. I Like Your Kind of Love. The Best of the Cadence Years. 1997. Varese Sarabande. The Love Songs. 1997. Sony Music. Columbia. BPI. Gold. Songs for Christmas. 1998-2001. Sony Music Distribution. Christmas Album. 1999. Columbia Records. Sony Music UK. 16 Biggest Hits. 2000. Columbia. Legacy. Super Hits. 2001. Legacy. Sony Music Distribution. The Complete Columbia Chart Singles Collection. 2002. Tarragon. 25 All-Time Greatest Hits 1956 to 1961. The Cadence Years. 2002. Varese Sarabande. Classic Masters. 2003. Capitol. The Best of the 70s. 2004. Sony, BMG. Love Songs. 2004. Columbia, Legacy. Happy Heart. The Best of Andy Williams. 2009. Sony UK. The Very Best of Andy Williams. 2009. Columbia Europe. Album Collaboration. The Williams Brothers Christmas Album. 1971. Barnaby. Album Narration. It's a Wonderful Christmas. 1997. Publishing Mills. Box Sets. Classic Album Collection. Volume 1. 2001. Collectibles. Classic Album Collection. Volume 2. 2002. Collectibles. Icons. 2010. Sony UK. Radio broadcasts. National Guard shows. 2010. Sounds of Yesteryear. Soundtrack compilations. These releases are composed of performances taken from the Andy Williams Show. Andy Williams Live. Treasures from his personal collection. 2001. Neon Tonic, Concord. Reissued as 31 stunning live performances. 2005. Crimson Productions. Andy Williams Live. Christmas Treasures. 2001. Neon Tonic, Concord. Singles. Notes.